Which wolf is winning in your life?
What if I told you that there's more to it? That there are benefits and resources from heaven that are available to help you in this life, and you've never heard about them? Are you curious? Well, join Gordon Merrill as he digs deeper into making heaven real in this life.
Welcome back to Making Heaven Real. Yes, you heard me right. Which wolf is winning in your life? There's a Cherokee legend that says a grandfather was teaching his grandson about two wolves, one representing all things good and one representing all things bad. The grandson asked him, well, which one wins? The grandfather says, the one you feed. We get into trouble as humans when we listen to the bad side or the bad wolf more than the good wolf. If you've been following with us for the last couple weeks on Making Heaven Real, we've made a lot of analogies to what we have available to us from heaven, from Heavenly Equity, from our spirit team. Similar to what you would expect if you were a commercial pilot in a commercial airline and were getting your direction and navigation and support from ATC. In our case, as spirits, we have the same kind of navigation, guidance, protection, communication available to us. Only ours is from our spirit team, or our STC. So when we do allow our spirit team to guide us and direct us, then that feeds the spirit side of our dichotomy. You know, we're spirit, as we discussed in the earlier episodes, put into a human form and put on earth for a human experience. I know I've heard several people go, is that really possible? Does that really make sense? Well, we know of one perfect example of that we celebrate at least twice a year. You know, God put a spirit in human form on this earth we call Jesus. Now, granted, his spirit kind of trumps our spirit in that he was God, and his spirit was a little stronger and had more resources and all that behind him than our spirit does. But our spirit was also made by God. So if God can put a spirit in a human form to put it on earth that we celebrate at Christmas and Easter, certainly can put every one of our spirits in a human form for the purpose of learning, growing, and maturing. So if we are spirit and human at the same time, then maybe our spirit has a couple wolves dealing with it. The human side and the spiritual side. So when we come back and look at this from our example over the last couple of weeks, we had a commercial airline that had to do a forced go-around because of a runway incursion that was witnessed in Chicago. Last week we talked about how STC mapped out completely a forced go-around for a spirit that had to leave this human body sooner than expected. And because of that, the STC immediately altered, rearranged, and replanned for this spirit the rest of their life plan. If you have to do a go-around going to Chicago, ATC will pick you up follow you through traffic, make sure that you don't run into anybody as you're getting back in line for another attempt at a successful landing. In this particular case, we had an example last week of STC doing that for a spirit that had to leave this earth early, but now is still back on track for their life plan. So if that's happening for us as spirits, and all of that's behind us as spirits, then we do have the spirit side of things, as well as the human side of things. What's kind of interesting that you probably have not heard a whole lot about is there are 100+ references in Scripture, depending on the version you're using, that talks about how we as spirits were known before we were born, conceived, or in our mother's womb. One says, before I was formed in my womb, in Jeremiah. Galatians says, he who had set me apart before I was born. A couple others are, your eyes saw my unformed substance, and therefore from there you called me from the womb. And this one I kind of really like the way it's worded, because it says, before I was formed, before God formed me in the womb, God knew me. And before you were born, I consecrated you. Kind of sounds like some of the planning behind our life's plan that we discussed, where we have help from everything in heaven that's in our heavenly equity, that's there to help us with the plan, put it together, so that all are in agreement before we come to earth. Early on, we discussed in Ecclesiastes where it says, when the body dies, then the dust shall return to the earth as it was, and the spirit shall return to God who gave it. So we have all of this going for us. We have the STC that made the change. We had the STC that put this together and amended the life plan. I think the part that's interesting there is twofold. Well, number one, there was the decision made by the spirit team that this human body was suffering more than it should. And because of that, the spirit was removed early. Sounds like a very compassionate, helpful spirit team. The other part of that is just because you were pulled out early doesn't mean you're not allowed to finish your life plan. Let's use an example from the college again. You know, you have a college class that we were talking about, and using that class as a part of your degree program or your overall spirit training program, this particular lifetime being one of those classes. So let's say you're doing great in your class, you're more than 2/3 of the way through your class, and all of a sudden you're in this very horrific automobile accident and you're in the hospital for several weeks. Everything's fine, you just have some broken bones and you're in, special casts and pins and traction and that kind of stuff. But you're allowed to finish that class somewhat out of the normal standard. You may not be in the desk every time the class meets. You may not be with the group that you're working on for the assignments. But you're still allowed to finish the class because of a situation that's completely beyond your control. Sounds like the spirit that was pulled out early because of the pain. We have a very reflective, compassionate, caring, nurturing STC that's behind us at everything that goes on. So, back to our example. Not really sure I want to use the wolf too much because of how that seems to be somewhat of a negative in several people's minds, but let's continue with the example and continue to use the wolf. And let's say we have a wolf that represents our spirit side and a wolf that represents our human side. Where we get in trouble as a human is when we listen to the bad side instead of the good. Where we get in trouble as a spirit, working on completing our life's plan, is when we reflect and focus too much on the human and not as much on the spirit. Your STC, if you listen to them and let them guide you, will make sure you complete your plan and complete your course in your college class that you're taking. If you listen to your human side and one of the kids in class convinces you to cut too many classes or go run off to a concert or something rather than going to class and doing your homework, you may be in jeopardy of not completing your class. Same here. When you listen to your spirit side will keep you on course, navigate all of the obstacles that may pop up in your way throughout the day, and help you focus on your mission at hand. Now let me take the example from last week a little bit further. The example we're talking about is actually hearing from my wife where she painted for me exactly what happened in her case. Yes, she was the one that was in pain, that the STC pulled her early so that she wouldn't have to continue to experience all of that pain. She's also the one where the STC changed and amended her life plan. So everything that she had done so far in her class, or this one life's plan, was not lost. So she's on target to finish the class, just like myself and anybody else in this particular current life. But the STC pulled her compassionately to keep her from hurting, but at the same time made arrangements and amended her life's plan to keep her on track. Let's go a step further. From my standpoint, spiritually, on the spirit side, I understand all of that. I'm extremely grateful to her STC for keeping her out of pain. I'm extremely grateful for her STC for reworking her life's plan, amending her life's plan, and putting her back on track to completing this course, this class. From the spirit side of things, I'm fine. I'm great. I love everything that's in place for her. The human side of things is a completely different story. Having this wonderful woman that God put in my life completely and totally integrated in everything that we both did together for 27 years, the human side has problems. The human side is still working on dealing with the separation. Does that mean I'm not totally, completely grateful to the STC for taking care of her and keeping her on track. Absolutely not. I cannot be happier with the situation, and I cannot be more grateful for how the STC has protected her and taken care of her. The human side, only 2 years since she passed, still has many things to deal with. But you know what? That's not a big problem, because I have my own STC. My STC understands the difference, and my STC knows how to help me through this and navigate this to keep me on track and keep me on course for completing this life plan. Just like the human side of things makes better progress and makes better decisions when they follow the good wolf, our spirit stays on track, does a better job of completing the requirements for our life's plan, and actually has a much better life when we follow the spirit wolf and not the human wolf. The spirit wolf and our STC is how we are able to make heaven real in our lives.
We hope you learned something new about God's love and His resources during our time together. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss out. You can find our social media links and our contact info in the show notes. When you're commenting, please reference the episode number. Join us next time as we again search out the ways of making heaven real in this life with Gordon Merrill.